Atheism isn't an ism. Say that 10 times fast. Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Dave. All my videos are opinionated. This one will be listed in a playlist called Building My Worldview. This is not an educational channel, and I presume the audience have at least a rudimentary understanding of the topics and concepts that I discuss. Today's topic is atheism. More precise, what's up with the kerfuffle surrounding the concept atheism. I am for treating all people with respect and dignity, and especially with the right to pursue happiness. But I will probably say and show stuff that might trigger some people, so in general, if you get easily triggered, you are not my preferred audience. The kerfuffle. What seems to be going on is that within the field of academic philosophy, the word atheism, and subsequently also atheist, has a different meaning than it has amongst the vast majority of atheists that it has had in academic circles earlier, and of what meaning can be derived from a plain reading of the word. For some bizarre reason, academics want to use the term non-theist to refer to those who have a lack of belief in God, and atheist to those who hold an affirmative stand on the claim there is no God. I will link in the video description to Stanford Encyclopaedia of Philosophy about atheism and agnosticism. This article outlines what I see as the problem. There is many reasons why I think this is, for the lack of words, ridiculous. The first reason is that if one breaks down the word atheist, it literally means not theist. According to all sources I have found, the prefix a does not have any other meanings than not in Greek. And this is a fantastically good system, since one can then describe both the thing by its name and not the thing by adding the prefix a to it. For me, this makes so much sense that even without any further explanation, that I think we don't need any other reasons to completely reject all use of atheist in any other context than not theist, and atheism as not theism. This is also in line with what people calling themselves atheists have meant by the word all the time it has been in use after ancient Greek times. As far back as 1772, Baron D. Holbach said that all children are atheists, they have no idea of God, indicating that he used the term to mean not theist. Let me show you. Here we have a Venn diagram with one set. I call this set the thing. Remember that this can be anything. It can be the set of all spoons, forks, cutlery, dogs, or it can be concepts like socialism, socialist, or theism. Imagine also that we have a good definition of the thing, and can therefore distinguish between the thing and not the thing. A definition is an explanation for what the thing is that includes everything that is the thing and excludes everything that is not the thing. We can also imagine that there is a set of all things that is not the thing. But I don't think this is right in this context, because not the thing can also be nothing. So I will keep the thing as a set and not the thing as not a set for now. If the thing is theism, then it makes perfect sense that not the thing is called atheism. This explains what I said in the teaser, that atheism isn't an ism. Even though the word ends with ism, you must bear in mind that the prefix a indicates that it's not this. So what is it? Well, it can be anything but theism, and equally important, it can be nothing. I mentioned in my video about secular humanist ethics that I use a minimum sum definition of concepts, if nothing else is said. And the minimum sum definition of theism is any or all belief systems or religions that emphasize or requires at least one God. In short, the belief in God. So then atheism is simply not that. The thing and not the thing is what we call a perfect dichotomy, in that they both are mutually exclusive and together they include everything, or at least everything that the thing potentially could apply to, and nothing. The same apply to theist and atheist. That the set is complete if they together include everything that the thing can apply to, I think solves another issue with the term atheist, namely the question if stones are atheists. My answer to this is no, or in order to be a theist, one has to be able to hold a belief. Therefore, I would say that both theist and atheist is properties that only can apply to conscient beings able to hold such a belief. I am thinking this is the same as exemplary property red, like in the color red. Red can only apply to things that can have a color. If one say that a thing that can't have a color is non-red, it is in a way right, but it's also redundant, like if I said I had a non-red thought just now. Thoughts are not in a category of things that can have a color in a literal sense. So in the case of theist and atheist, I would say that only apply to humans, at least as far as we know for now. But then again, in my mind, all humans at a given moment are either theists in that they hold an active belief in at least one God, or atheists in that they don't. And this is a dichotomy. Imagine that the larger circle is the set of all humans. Used as an identity marker, these are what I call an as a matter of fact identity, meaning that one cannot really choose to identify as one if one is, as a matter of fact, the other. Someone who don't believe in God can't identify by choice as a theist and vice versa. Well, they can, but it doesn't make sense. To summarize so far, theism is systems of thought or religions that require a belief in God, and atheism is not that. It's not necessarily a belief at all, and specifically not a belief in God. I will also note that in this setup there is just one proposition taken into consideration, namely, there is a God. The question is not whether one knows, but whether one believes this proposition. If we had a way to investigate the truth of the proposition, like exemplary the claim, there is an African elephant in the kitchen, one could just check and then give the proposition a true or false value. Then we could set up the claim and the opposing claim as a dichotomy and assign one as true and the other as false. There is either an African elephant in the kitchen or not. But there's no way for us to check the God claim, and we are therefore left to either believe or to not believe. As we see, the use of atheism in the meaning an affirmative position that there is a God is a new thing within academic philosophy, and it don't align with how the word has been used historically, or how most atheists today use the word. It should be mentioned that it breaks with the way loanwords from Greek are supposed to be used. This is not a local issue when Greek is used in English, but the same Greek words are used all over the world. This raises the stake when English-speaking scholars decide to disregard them. I will talk more about the language game later. So what about agnosticism? I have left agnosticism out of it so far on purpose because I think this is a separate issue altogether, but is absolutely a part of the kerfuffle. Remember the article in Stanford Encyclopaedia of Philosophy that I base what I deem as problematic views on scholarly philosophers on is named Atheism and Agnosticism. Here agnosticism is the middle ground between belief in either the claim God exists or the opposing claim God doesn't exist. Agnostics is described as someone who rejects both claims. First, I want to establish that what is the claim, the thesis if you want, is the first claim and not the second. There are several reasons why I think this is clear. I will mention two. The first is that the second claim is redundant without the first. No one would even think the thought that there is no God unless someone first proposed that there is. The second is that the difference between no belief at all and the belief that there is in fact no God, is inconsequential. Let's say someone came to a remote tribe that didn't have a prior concept of God and demonstrated for them that there is in fact no God. They would not have to change a thing. But if they got a convincing demonstration that God actually do exist, they would have to change everything. Then there is also the issue with what the word Gnostic and agnostic traditionally has meant. Gnostic was, as far as I understand, a word in ancient Greek that meant knowledge. But with the introduction of Christianity, the word has been used to describe a certain form or type of knowledge, namely divine or spiritual knowledge obtained through direct contact with the spirit realm, or God. I don't know this, but I wonder if this might be described as sure knowledge. I think this would be consistent with how the word is used both in ancient times and later. I know that the ancient Greeks would differentiate between sure knowledge and knowledge as in information about the world, which was seen as less reliable. Plato is clear in exemplary the Allegory of the Cave that he considered earthly knowledge as less true and even distorted compared to knowledge obtained by those who climb out of the cave and see the ideas in the pure form. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, I reject the possibility both to obtain knowledge from the spiritual realm and sure knowledge of this kind. I don't reject sure knowledge of all kinds, exemplary a priori knowledge or definitional knowledge. From this spiritual knowledge, or knowledge obtained through contact with the spirit realm, or the word Gnosticism is formed, and thus a person calling themselves Gnostic is a person who claims to hold such knowledge. Remember again that this is a minimum sum definition. Gnostic religiosity has also been used to describe specific types of traditions within Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and Buddhism. I will not go into the whole meaning of Gnosticism in this video. That would require more than one video on its own. But I would like to remark that if we define Gnosticism as the belief that people can acquire knowledge from the spiritual realm, this will include a large chunk of Christians from all denominations even today. Also, if Gnostic knowledge is this kind of knowledge, then all Christians who claim to have conversations with God or Jesus is also included. This also counts for those who claim that one must have the Holy Spirit to understand the Bible. In this case, the whole Bible is Gnostic information. Anyway, I'm quite sure that it was this understanding of the word Thomas Henry Huxley was thinking about when he coined the word agnostic in 1869 and said, It simply means that man shall not say he know or believe what he has no scientific ground for professing to know or believe. He used the word first time at a meeting in the Metaphysical Society in 1869 to describe his philosophy, which rejects all claims of spiritual or mystical knowledge. Thus, to use this word that we fully know the origin and meaning of as a creed or as a middle ground stance on the question about religious claims today is in my mind wrong, because if those who claim to be agnostic use the agnostic method as Huxley proposed, they would have to reject all religious claims and therefore take a stand that is de facto indistinguishable from most people calling themselves atheists. I know what people who call themselves agnostic mean, so I won't make a fuss about it. But I do think that considering how atheists define atheism, which is how I think is rational to define it, it also includes those who call themselves agnostics. I distinguish between agnostic when used as a creed, as in the middle ground between theism and atheism, and the agnostic principle when referring to Huxley's principle. The agnostic principle is also, in my mind, so important that it would be really sad if people came to think that agnostic just is a stand on the God question without investigating further. Today, this principle is so broadly accepted both in academia and elsewhere that I can imagine that many takes it for granted that it applies. But this is not the case. Today, in most cases, it is enough to say that one adheres to the scientific method, since in most cases this is included. But it is nonetheless important to know that it's not always the case. Even at some Christian university in the United States today, some must sign a statement of faith in order to attend. What this implies might not be clear to everyone, and therefore it's convenient to point out that this shows that this specific university don't adhere to the agnostic principle, so that everybody knows why their scholars can be disregarded as unscientific. I promised earlier to get back to what I call the language game. First, I will point out, just so that you guys know, that there is another way to read the word atheist. So far, I have presented what I am convinced is the correct way, and the way almost everyone, other than some academic, philosophers, and Christians, read it, like atheism. But it could also be read as atheism. In this case, it would mean not Godism. In this reading, it's an ism or a belief that there is no God, thus aligning with the use of the word that the philosophers I have talked about use it. But to be clear, I think this is the wrong use of the word for reasons I have already mentioned. So, why do I get so upset about this, you might ask? That philosophers use words in specific meanings is both common and expected when reading philosophy. One must expect to first read a small dictionary of made-up words, word use in special meanings by that philosophers, and so on. I remember that when reading Kant, I had a printout of his special vocabulary at my side all the time. Without it, I would be lost. Also, as the article Atheism and Agnosticism point out, it's not a given that just because the word atheism and agnosticism is used like this amongst academic philosophers, everybody must use it like this. They don't decide over the universe. There are still 3 things I will point out that I see as problematic issues. First, is that both words in their original meaning point to important concepts that we don't want to overlook. Actually, we want more people to be aware of them. Especially this counts in my mind for the word agnostic, that I think has altered the meaning the most, from a complete rejection of all spiritual knowledge to some kind of middle ground where one holds the door open halfway. Maybe there is a spirit world or not, I don't know. Also because we know everything about who coined the word and what he meant by it originally. The second reason is that both words have an original and unambiguous meaning that aligns with a plain reading of the word in Greek, while the new or altered meaning, in my opinion, reduces the word to mere labels. But the most important is the third thing, namely that there is a language game going on. When evangelic or apologetic Christians attack atheism, they attack almost always the affirmative "there is no God" definition of the word by showing that it is irrational. And the worst thing is, they are right. It is irrational. It's irrational even by the agnostic principle to hold an affirmative stand for which we don't have sufficient evidence. But to be clear, in relation to the vast majority of people calling themselves atheists, this is a straw man. Still, they hammer at it like if the world is about to end. How irrational atheism is, by a definition of the word that almost no one holds. Internally in the congregation, they create a consensus that atheists are irrational idiots. And then they try to funnel atheists to the much easier for them to handle position of agnostic, which also have been altered to the new revised definition of somebody who don't know what to believe. Now I have to say In academia, and maybe in philosophy more than other fields of study, one must define oneself, how one uses words and concepts, to create an accurate understanding that is not always present in colloquial language. This is an important part of academic work. I haven't read Robin Lee Poidevin or J.L. Schellenberg or any of the other philosophers that take an affirmative stand on the atheism definition. So I don't know how they reason for it, other than what the article I refer to in this video say about it. Maybe it would make perfect sense if I read them. It doesn't seem to be the case though. Schellenberg is quoted in the article as saying, "In philosophy, the atheist is not just somebody who doesn't accept theism, but more strongly someone who opposes it, seemingly attempting to establish this as a norm." I will also note that all philosophers quoted in the article as taking this position are themselves atheists, or at least agnostic. And this makes me, suspicious, because I consider the affirmative stand as irrational. That there is no clear proof either of the claim God exists or God doesn't exist is, as I understand it, generally accepted. And then I must ask myself, does these guys sit on some evidence that I haven't heard? Because if not, they are in a position where they, according to the way they themselves define the concepts, affirming as true a statement that they don't have sufficient evidence for. Anyway, as an attempt to end this video, I will first say, there is no law saying that atheist community, or anyone else for that part, must accept the definitions proposed by some philosophers. Second is that anyone saying that the definition of atheism as not theism is not represented in academic philosophy is just plain wrong. The article confirms this. Exemplary: Michael Martin, 1990, Anthony Flew, 1972, the editors of Oxford Handbook of Atheism, Bullivant and Roos, 2013, think of atheism as a psychological state of not holding a belief in God, thus aligning with the colloquial and earlier understanding of the word and with a plain reading. But as you guys must have understood, I don't agree that one can philosophically use atheism as describing specific beliefs, like strong, weak, and positive, negative, and so on. Such use of the word would change the word to become a belief in itself, drawing utility from the suffix ism in the word. Exemplary: positive atheism would have a meaning positive atheism. Remember, as I hope I have shown in this video, atheism can also mean no belief at all. Thus, using the word like this would gatekeep the word against those who just don't believe, as a psychological state. Also remember, as I mentioned in my last video, atheist activism will in practice take the form of anti-theism, unless one means just helping those who suffer from religious trauma or creating community for people without religion and so on. So why not use the word anti-theism, if that's what one means? An anti-theist is, after all, also an atheist. But it's in the power of being an anti-theist they argue actively against religion. Anti also is a Greek prefix, so that this combination is fine. Anti as a prefix means against, so that word anti-theist makes perfect sense to describe opposition to theism. Please folks, use atheism when that's what you mean, and anti-theism if that's what you mean, secularism if that's what you mean, and secular or secular humanistic ethics if that's what you mean. There already is more than enough ambiguity in the word. If you need a new word to describe something, don't use a word that already means something else important. I love to be right, and that is the reason why I want you to correct me if I'm wrong. This counts for all my videos. Please write a comment below or contact me with some of the contact information I provided in the description below. Especially, I hope to hear from you, as I said, if you think I have said something that is factually wrong. Wikipedia should be sufficient sources for most of what I'm saying. If you still struggle to find sources for anything, please notify me in the commentary section and I will get straight to work providing it. Thank you for the view and have a nice day.